Hi, Frank. I'm Rob Kratt. How are you?
Frank Burns from the Connecticut Tourism Coalition.
Good to see you.
Glad to be here. Cindy, I just saw you a couple of minutes ago.
Yeah, still at the old state house. Denise actually had to get going. She was going to try to stick it through for the meeting, but she had another meeting to get to.
Okay. The people we have coming to this meeting, Cindy.
Ashley, do you know?
So Anthony will be on. I don't know if Ashley knows because I don't think she has access to the registration. Okay.
I have about 7, 8. Cindy, not including Jason, Denise. So I wasn't sure if they would be able to make it today.
Yeah, neither of them will be on. We do have Anthony Champelli Mode, Aaron Markovich, Dana from Connecticut Humanities, and then possibly Felicia Lindau and Joe Smith. I haven't heard one way or the other.
Well, Frank, if it's just us, it'll be a very brief meeting.
And Ashley, if you want to share any files for any reason, you do have, you can share your screen.
Thanks, Cindy. I don't think we're prepared to screen share anything today, but that's good to note for future meetings.
I'm so glad this is being recorded. I hope I can get a copy of the recording. Great.
Yes, and I can share, but all meeting recordings are available on our website. We're a public commission, so these subcommittee meetings are part of public record, so on and so forth.
Terrific. Thank you.
Hey, Felicia, how you doing?
Hey, Frank, how's it going?
Good. You got time after this meeting to chit chat for a few minutes?
Yes, I do.
Okay. I'll call you.
Perfect.
AA is connecting. There can only be one person.
Tis I.
Anthony, how you doing?
I'm great, Frank. How about yourself?
Beautiful day here in Old Slaybrook.
I was going to ask you, where are you at these days?
Sitting in Saybrook today.
You're not in the in my favorite room in the hotel.
You know, next time you come, that's where we're going to have our next meeting.
All right, it's a deal.
Which one's your favorite?
What's the name of the room, Frank? The Saybrook room?
Saybrook room, yeah.
It's
You've been at this, Felicia, haven't you?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. That's the one with the pool table and the poker table and the bar?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, it's a couple minutes after 3. I just want to be respectful of people's time. I know that there might be a few other people joining us, but if the group doesn't mind, I'd like to get started and start with introducing myself. I've met a number of you. Some of you I have not met yet. We can go around and do introductions so that we all have an understanding of who we all are. So if you wouldn't mind, your name, the organization you're affiliated with, and your level of interest in this particular committee or CT 250 and America 250. I'll start. My name is Rob Krett. I'm the Executive Director and CEO of the Connecticut Museum of Culture and History, formerly known as the Connecticut Historical Society. If you didn't catch the news, we rebranded and renamed about 4 weeks ago. So that's our new name for the organization. And I'm been involved with the Connecticut 250 Commission for since its inception. I've also participated in some national conferences. Jason, Scott, and I were in Williamsburg in March, and so we had a chance to meet with colleagues from 34 different states and to begin to hear about what's going on in other parts of the country. And I'm also aware of what's happening at the national level with the National Commission, and I'm sure some of you have some interest and exposure with that. I think this is an important event for cultural organizations, particularly museums, as we approach the 250th. One of the things that I just wanted to say that I think is important for us to be thinking about is the AASLH, which is the American Association for State and Local History, has been very active and are probably recognized from my perspective as one of the leaders in this arena. They've said that in the bicentennial in 1976, about 30% of the museums that exist today were formed in and around 1976. And so in a way, that's a little bit of a legacy for the bicentennial on our culture. And some of the conversations that I've been involved with some of my colleagues around the country is, what will the legacy of the 250th be? And one of the things that I just wanted to repeat that the Commissioner Denise Merrill has said often that in Connecticut, the 250th should be less about the Revolutionary War battles and generals and much more about the ideals of the American Revolution. And I think that's something that I just wanted to put out there for us to be thinking about as we talk about marketing and tourism. I think this is a chance for us to have some of the cultural organizations present public programs that relate to those larger ideals like the liberty, freedom, democracy, civic engagement, those broader things. But I also hope that one of the legacies of the 250th is a stronger relationship in Connecticut between museums, cultural organizations, and tourism. I've lived in other parts of the country, and like many of you have traveled a lot, and I think that there are hidden gems all over Connecticut, and I think that the organization I run is one of those hidden gems. And I said this in public comments previously, that we don't want to be a hidden gem any longer. And so I hope the 250th is a little bit of a catalyst to help organizations like ours to become a little bit more known and engaged with communities. So I'll be quiet and just ask us to kind of go around a room. Let's play sort of phone tag here. Frank, if you don't mind, introduce yourself, say a few things, and then call on the next person.
Okay, hi, my name is Frank Burns. I'm the Executive Director for the Connecticut Tourism Coalition, which was founded about 6 years ago with the sole purpose of trying to get sustainable funding to kind of market and promote tourism within the state of Connecticut. We have worked over the years with legislative leaders, in particularly Senator Austin and Representative from New Haven, Tony Walker. This last year, we had the opportunity to kind of form a kind of a sub-coalition, working with Brett Thompson from the Connecticut Art Alliance and Jason Mancini from Connecticut Humanities and myself, and we created a funding roadmap, which I think many of you have probably seen. We're looking for $58.5 million to fund the needs of all three sectors. Even though we didn't get all the funding that the funding that we were looking for, I think we made great inroads with legislative leaders and working with Anthony here, some inroads within the governor's office. So again, as we kind of move forward, we're hoping that the three groups will continue working together in this next legislative session and ultimately get that sustainable source of funding that we need to kind of market and promote all that Connecticut has to offer. So with that, I'll turn it over to Felicia.
All right. Hi, I'm Felicia Lindau. I'm with the marketing agency Adams and Knight. We have supported the Office of Tourism for the last almost 9 years, and I head up the tourism initiatives. And I will be supporting Anthony in this exciting effort as well. And Anthony, I guess, perfect pass to you.
Duck goose, right?
Yeah.
Yep, I'm Anthony. I am the Chief Marketing Officer for the state. In my role, I oversee both the Office of Tourism as well as marketing branding for the state. If you were to look at that in the cleanest way possible, it's how do we tell a story to the world about Connecticut being a great place to live, work, and play. I'm really excited to be part of this group. For us to be able to tell our story historically about Connecticut being a place where we have made progress in America. I'd like to add on to what Rob was saying. I think it is very much about our ideals and what makes Connecticut who we are. And it is also about what we make in this state and what we have made, which makes America a better place in general. We're in the process of rebranding the state as we speak, and this new brand will be rolling out in the next month to month and a half. It's more present and forward looking. I'd love to be able to see this committee and how we market Connecticut 250 as a way of telling the historical side of this story and then going into the legacy, using that as a launch pad to put Connecticut on the map once again and show the world that everything that we offer, a lot of it is because of what we do right here. So if there's, in my capacity, and I've said this publicly a few times, if there's any one thing that I can leave behind, it's getting a lot of different folks engaged and on board with what's going on and moving in the same direction. So I think this is a fantastic way to engage people across multiple industries in order to create forward progress in vibrancy in the state. I'll pass it over to, I'm going to pass it to Doug Lord from the Library Association because I don't know Doug and I'd like to hear more about his story.
Hi, I'll be very brief. Basically, on the commission, I mostly work with the outreach committee. I do represent the Connecticut Library Association. We have, perhaps you've heard of public libraries. We have libraries in every community, so I think that's mainly why CLA is involved. We're looking forward to pumping out and pushing out the information, as well as recruiting various organizations and individuals into the effort. So thanks for being here. I'm mostly here just to listen and learn. And if I can answer any questions, I'm glad to. I will pass it off to Joseph Smith. Have you gone?
No, not yet. Hi, everyone. I am Joseph Smith. I prefer to be called Joe. I'm an enrolled member of the Mohegan Tribe. I'm currently serving on the Mohegan Council of Elders. I've been kind of designated as the tribal rep for Mohegan, and I've been serving in some capacity on the Mohegan campus, either on the government side or at the casino since 2002. What I'm doing now, I'm on the elders, which is the body of the Mohegan Tribes government that kind of takes care of culture, history, and our social fabric. And I have been serving on this for almost 4 years now. And before that, I was a publicist at Mohegan Sun. And also I was the editor of the Tribes newsletter. So I'm looking forward to this adventure, and I'll pass it over to Ashley Malcolm.
Hi, everyone. You might have gotten a lot of emails from me. I'm Rob's administrator, and I'll be your recording secretary for this subcommittee. And I will pass it along to Dana.
Oops, you're on mute.
There we go. Sorry about that. Hi, everybody. I'm Dana Barcelos Allen. I am the new communications manager at Connecticut Humanities, working closely with Cindy. And I'm looking forward to everything that we are going to do together over the next few years. And I would love to get more information from each one of you. If you've got anything you'd like to share, if you have any needs, you know, that you communicate to Cindy or me, I'm glad to help. And again, good to be on the team.
And you'll pass the baton to.
Oh, and I'm passing the baton to, how about, well, let's just go to Cindy. I'll just
Hi,
go,
everyone.
yeah.
Cindy Tolosa. I am the Development Officer for CT Humanities and also the Project Manager for America 250 here in Connecticut. I'm looking forward to working with you all, kind of involved with all of the different subcommittees. So I look forward to liaising and helping to make sure that we're all working in the same direction and working together to make the 250. And I will pass it on to Aaron.
Sorry, got to get focused there real fast. Aaron Markovich, Executive Director, Connecticut Landmarks. We own and operate 12 historic properties around the state. And I got mouthy on LinkedIn, and Rob Krett was like, congratulations, you're on a committee now. So that's that's not why I'm here. We happen to also own the Nathan Hale Homestead. You know, we're in it to win it. So thanks for having me. Let's see, who haven't I
I think Anthony's left.
Oh, our person who Anthony. Ooh, I'm not gonna try that. I got Markovich, but I'm not gonna try to butcher that one. Yep, that's as good as it's gonna get.
Shampalimo, and apologies. Thank you. Sorry, apologies for being late. My name is Anthony Shampalimo. I joined the commission as a member of the public. I'm in the private sector. I own, develop, and operate hotels. I have a historic hotel in Amenia, New York called Troutbeck, which is actually the genesis of my involvement with this commission. We've been, it's a historic site in which members of the NAACP convened over the years, including once in 1916 and another time in 1933. And it was on the basis of that we started something called the Troutbeck Symposium, which is an annual gathering of 250 or so area high school students from both public and independent schools who participate in the study of local history that includes Western Connecticut and Dutchess County and New York State through the lens of Troutbeck. We're opening another hotel here in Litchfield, Connecticut, where I live. I spent my formative years in Litchfield, but we're opening a hotel right in the center of town called Belden House on North Street. But I grew up in the Oliver Wolcott House, which is former home of Governor Wolcott, and it was in that backyard that they brought up the statue of King George from Bowling Green and melted it down into musket balls. So it's in the soil where I am. I'm a transplant from Montreal, Canada, but I'm very much now native to this part of the world. I'm proud to serve on the commission and excited to do my part, however way I can be useful.
Great. Thanks, Anthony. Stacy, you just joined us. We're doing general introductions and why you're interested in being part of this committee.
Sorry, I couldn't hear. Were you calling on me?
Yeah, we were just doing general introductions. People are telling the rest of the group who they are.
Great.
If you wanted to take a couple minutes to do so, that'd be great.
Yeah, my name is Stacy Zakin. I was born and grew up in Manchester, Connecticut. I now work for the town. We are in the midst of our bicentennial, so I've been involved in celebrations for that. My job is as manager of Workspace, which is the town's co-working, meeting, and gallery space right in downtown Manchester. So we have private offices, we have co-working space, we do community art exhibits. We try to, we consider local artists to be all of New England. We love to feature Manchester people and Connecticut artists as well. And we're just looking to create partnerships across the state to give our entrepreneurs and our artists opportunities and resources.
Great.
So when I heard about this, I thought, well, we should be involved.
Great, thanks very much. Just so that everybody knows that this is the very beginning of a process. I think that this group met just one other time, and so it was just Joe, Anthony, and myself, I think. So it was a very small group, but so this is more of an organizational meeting than anything else. On the agenda, I provided a link to the ct250.org website, and I just want to encourage you, if you'd like to read a little bit more about some of the founding documents that are associated with the commission and with this committee, that's a resource that you can go to, and I won't take more time going through that in detail. I'll leave it up to you to take a look. I also put in the agenda the purpose of this committee, just so that we're all a little focused on what it is that we're directing our efforts toward. And the purpose is a collaboration with the state and local tourism destination for American Revolution history. So it's pretty broad, pretty general, but I hope that what we might be able to do is to really see how some partnerships could develop between those individual organizations that might be delivering content and those of you that are involved more in the tourism industry. There's also a lot of tools that I know that Cindy has and the whole Connecticut Humanities team have been involved with that are there for you to utilize. And Cindy, if you just want to take a few minutes and talk a little bit about that so people know where to find, if they want to go find files or minutes from meetings, how would they go about doing that?
Yeah, so if you're a member of the commission, you should have a login to the commission workspace and should be able to access that through the shared Google Drive and then going into the marketing and tourism folder. To access that folder, you will have to log in via your at ct250.org email address to Google. For everybody else, I will be sharing that workspace folder with you. I'm a little worried that my internet is cutting out. Are you okay?
You're fine.
Yeah, it's not too bad.
So I will send a link to that and make sure that all of you are connected. And when I send that link, I can send you a couple of instructions. In that folder, we have everything organized by meeting date. So we'll have agendas, minutes, and any other files that we're sharing for any given meeting. And if you need to walk through that space, I can do that virtually at your convenience.
Thanks, Cindy. Any questions?
I'd like to pose one question to the group just about the angle of what we're all hoping to accomplish together. Rob, when you've been speaking, you have consistently mentioned this is about history and about the American Revolutionary history, and obviously it is. But is it possibly a slightly broader umbrella that's about maybe who we are now is reflected in who we were? Like, I know Anthony's new brand is going to be about dreamers and doers. That's who we were and it's who we are, and that there's a link between our present and our past. And I wonder if that slightly broader lens is maybe appropriate for this celebration.
Oh, yes, for sure. I think that's one of the things that I think anyone in the history, cultural community, I think that it's not just about looking backwards as to who we were, but it really is about the relevance to today. Aaron, maybe you could talk about that a little bit at Connecticut Landmarks, how you approach that in some of the public programs that you and your organization are involved with.
I've got to get one of those buttons that makes the mute go off faster. Big red flashy button, so that way you also don't get caught in talking about people. Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about the concept of what is a hero, and much more expanded, because you look at somebody like Nathan Hale. Well, yeah, he's the state hero, but he also wasn't a terribly good spy. So, what is it? What is it in the person that makes them a hero? And that can expand to women's lives and enslaved people and their work. Or even our property at in Palmer Warner in East Haddam is an LGBTQ story of the mid 20th century. Well, he was somebody who was looking to preserve a Revolutionary War era site, but the story is more about his work to preserve it. So there's ways that you can kind of view them along the continuum. You know, I was saying in a meeting earlier today that Cindy was having is that, you know, my guiding star on a lot of this is, how is this revolutionary? And I know we've kind of dropped the Connecticut, you know, revolutionary, whatever, but it's like, what makes these decisions? What makes this the act that the person did or that the site embodies? How is that revolutionary in some way? And so that can bring it to a much broader perspective while still tying it between sort of 1776 and today. I kind of imagine that, you know, one of those strings with a pin on one end, you can draw the circle with it, like that kind of idea.
Mhm.
And I guess just to build on that for a minute, Felicia, I think those broader themes are things that states that were not part of the original 13 colonies are looking toward, so that there's much more of a national celebration. I don't know if any of you have seen this publication. Ashley, we could make this available. This is through AASLH. It's a publication that they've done that includes a number of different themes that they've developed. I think, Cindy, has this been made available to members of the commission? And I don't know if you have a stock of them. I have access to it. We could get some more from Nashville to distribute to committee members if that would be helpful.
No, we have plenty.
Okay.
We have a very, very, very large box at
Okay.
Connecticut Humanities Office. But so if anybody would like that, I'm happy to send it your way, or have them, if at some point we choose to meet in person, have those available to share.
Great.
Yeah, I would love to jump in for just a moment and
Yeah.
talk, building on what Felicia is asking about, and Rob, what you're even referencing here. I think if we're able to do this correctly, to create a robust story that links all of the pieces of our history, all of these rich cultural assets that, you know, may not have been created during the colonial era, but what comes from them is this revolutionary thinking, which another way of saying it is also it's innovative, it's forward thinking, it's visionary. We're going to be able to, I mean, realistically create a better blueprint, not just in the storytelling, but how all these organizations work together. So building on what Frank has been doing with the different organizations and trying to get greater funding from the legislature and the governor's office, I think this could be a really strong way for us to show the value of a cohesive, unified front and how we market the state. And ultimately, it just screams for attention and is in being able to create that success. So I do think that if we're able to create a broad platform, which again, I think our new brand, when it does come out soon, will be able to help us with in providing some of that DNA. But there is so much more at stake here than just celebrating 250. This is really helping our industries, you know, thrive in the long run, as well as you know, greater economic developments in our towns and cities down the line by putting Connecticut on the map on a national level. So
Well said. Well said.
be a little aspirational, but I definitely think that that's possible here.
I think that's great. I lived in other parts of the country, and I've just been impressed. I referenced a little bit earlier that there are really wonderful cultural resources here across Connecticut, and I think the direction of arts, culture, and tourism working together, there is a cultural heritage economy here that I think can be developed, and so this that might be one of the legacies. I wanted to touch on one thing. There was a gathering in Fort Ticonderoga last month, and a number of my staff went and participated. One of the things that I'd like us to investigate a little bit further and to get the group's thoughts on it, there were representatives from mostly museum organizations that were there, but there was also representation from tourism departments from New York and Vermont. And so one of the things that I would like to know more about is the relationship between Anthony's organization, the Department of Tourism, and the rest of us, and are there models in the greater New England area that we might be looking at, or are there models nationally that we should be looking and learning about that relationship between departments of tourism and the organizations that might be providing content? I know that in my experience, Virginia is out there doing some real interesting things. They have about $7 million was appropriated from their state legislature to help with this. South Carolina had $9 million from their state legislature. New Jersey had about 25 million from their state legislature, primarily for preservation projects at state historic sites. And I think Vermont had about $25,000. But I don't know if any of you have other thoughts or ideas, but it seems to me that if we could learn from what our other colleagues are doing around the country in terms of that relationship between the State Department of Tourism and the 250 Commission, I think it could be useful. And if anyone would like to help with doing some of that research, we can certainly follow up, but I think it would be worthwhile for us to at least take a look to see what the landscape is like.
Is your question about the landscape, about how communication flows between all of the different assets of a state and its tourism board, or is your question more about money flowing from the state government to support?
Really the former. I guess I'd like to see if there's some, I'm asking if this group feels like it's a worthwhile endeavor to take a look at some other models of how the states are interacting with the 250 Commission in these various states. I poked around a little bit, but I haven't had that much success. And I don't know if, Anthony, maybe you're already aware of some of the things that might be going on with your colleagues and the individual state 250 commissions, but I just thought that might be a worthwhile endeavor to see what other people are doing, and we might learn from that.
I think it's a worthwhile endeavor, Rob, for a couple of reasons. One, it's good to see what other people are doing, but also, from a funding mechanism, particularly if you're going to be looking for funding from the legislature and the governor's office, this would be a good story to tell. I mean, everybody had conversations with Senator Rust, and one of the questions she asked me is, well, do you know what the other states are spending? And some of the numbers that you just quoted, I spoke with her, and she's kind of a little like disbelief. New Jersey's going to spend 25 million, and we're doing what? Nothing. So I think that kind of helps a little bit, particularly with legislators, if this commission is going to go and ask for funding, which I think they should. I think the more data that you can give them, the better the case that we can make. It's not to argue with, why is New Jersey spending 25 million? They wouldn't be spending it if they didn't think they were going to get a return on it.
Right. So if anyone wants to help me to do that, you can follow up and send me a note. But again, I just wanted to put it out there as a question. It sounds like it's worthwhile to pursue, and I'm happy to do that. And again, if anyone wants to help bird dog some of this, it's Ashley's been helpful. It's a little difficult to find. Some of the states haven't even started to think about the 250th. They think it's like far down the road, but it'll be here before we all know it.
Rob, were the numbers that you
Yeah.
quoted, the 7 million for Virginia, was that just for the 250?
Yep, exactly.
Okay, wonderful. I somehow missed that soundbite. Okay, great. So it's 9 million for South Carolina just for the 250 and 7 million for Virginia just for 250. That's awesome. Okay, good to know.
And 25 for New Jersey and 25 million for New Jersey, and a lot of it is designated for bricks and mortar for state historic sites. So that's a specific use.
And it's actually 25 million specifically for bricks and mortar, but they've had, I want to say, another 5 million per year for other 250th projects. So it's significantly higher.
I think that's the interesting question. to answer is how's it being allocated, right? So, you know, in terms of engagement, which I know has been a theme of our various other conversations. And I believe that, you know, part of our mandate is to facilitate that engagement, sort of to elevate the relevance and sort of to make it contemporary, which goes back to our earlier conversation and say, well, you know, there are a lot of folks who don't. We've heard this in other commission meetings. You know, there are a lot of folks whose personal perspective does not necessarily include a resonance with the 250th anniversary. And so, you know, how do we create that kind of engagement, and around, you know, is it around monuments, or is it around sort of, you know, more the question of innovation? I think it's quite a good theme, right? That's quite inclusive and contemporary, forward thinking and modern. But I'd be very curious to know, you know, why. Well, one, how they were successful at raising that funding. That's great. Two, you know, on what basis is it distributed and to whom, and how do you go about doing that in a way that I think is about, you know, yeah, engagement.
Well, I can answer part of that, not all of it. I know that the Virginia, when we were there in March, they had told us that this was a bit of a layup because they have some history with the state legislature in allocating funds for historic anniversaries. And the state legislature in Virginia already knows what the return on that investment is. And so 7 million was easy. They also, in March when we were there, they had made an announcement that the local power company had committed $1 million. And so that commission is working to raise public and private dollars to help to publicize, get the word out. I don't know that they're making grants to smaller organizations. I'm not sure of that, Anthony, but I know it's more organizational support, and the marketing piece, I think is what I understood in Virginia specifically. I think I was surprised at South Carolina, you know, 9 million, their state legislature stepped up. I can ask some more questions about how those funds are being used. I've been involved in some conversations with the National Commission, and it's a little touchy. The National Commission has sort of stumbled coming out of the gate. Some of you may be aware of this, but there have been a few bumps in the road, and they've relaunched their strategic plan on July 4th this past year when at a baseball game in Milwaukee. And I think they're struggling a little bit to find some traction. I think that they have aspirations to do a lot of fundraising from the private sector to help to support these efforts. So far, the National Commission has spent about $30 million on administrative support, staffing, those kinds of things. And the only corporation that showed an interest is Meta, and they paused their level of interest, waiting to see if some of the bumps that the National Commission was trying to work through would get smoothed out. I haven't heard anything for quite some time. And so I don't know that the National Commission will have funds that would be made available. I've advocated that we work in Connecticut with our congressional delegation to see if we can introduce some legislation that would provide funding for America 250, and that it would go through existing agencies like the National Endowment for the Humanities, National Endowment for the Arts, and the Institute for Museum and Library Services, so that there could be more funds available for organizations to do more innovative or kind of programming that they don't normally do. Otherwise, I think that we're going to see organizations across Connecticut and other parts of the country sort of taking from Peter and giving to Paul in terms of programming, and that's possible, but it's not the best scenario. So I'm still hopeful that we'll see some funding for specific programming, perhaps through the Connecticut State Legislature. But I think that ultimately, if we could get the resources from the federal government, in 1976, the federal government made over $150 million available for bicentennial activities. And you do the numbers and looking at what that would mean in today's dollars, and it's well over $300 million. And so there have been some conversations that came out of the meeting in Williamsburg. 250 million for the 250th is a concept that I've had some conversations with some elected officials to begin to work together with their staffs. And the idea would be to get those funds to these agencies, to organizations across the country, but through these existing agencies. So those are a few things that I'm aware of in terms of some activity related to funding, but Cindy, I don't know if the commission had broader conversations about it.
But if I could, sorry, Rob, if I could ask a follow-on question, because I know, our specific job and the commission's specific job, right, is not so much to be the organizing body, as it were, for specific events, right, but to encourage the commemoration and the dialogue and the discussion that ensues around it. So within the context of fundraising and resources, I guess, so the first step is us understanding how and where those resources might come from, and perhaps also assisting in generating those resources. But then thereafter, making sure that folks understand that they're available for their own initiatives. If they want to author something or develop a program in their local community, then we're the conduits for saying, well, one, did you know about it in the first place? Are you aware? And reaching as broad of an audience as we can. And then two, here's what's available to you. And I sort of pose that as a question, as sort of saying that's where we insert ourselves, right?
Yeah. Anthony, you can.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to be able to use our perch at the state, and in this group being statewide, to not necessarily be the central organizing body and organizing events and coordinating, because that's a monumental Herculean task. However, I do think we have the opportunity to be the unifying body in creating a programmatic piece that I guess amplifies it to the world. So like, this is a loose example. I'm not necessarily saying this is how it should be for what we're doing, but the way we work at the Office of Tourism is we have a central website at CT Visit. I know many of you on this call know about that and use it frequently. But if we're able to use our CT 250 website as a central hub to have all of our participating organizations, which can also help drive engagement, we can create a whole program around that where people can identify as part of it, come on the site, list themselves there, and be able to list all of their events. It takes the entire world and puts them into a specific place. And then what we can do and allow them to advertise their specific events and individual offerings on their own. But then we can also promote Connecticut 250 as an entire big thing and tell a story about why people should be coming from all over, and people within the state should be proud of it. So if I had the chance to, if you guys would be receptive to that, I could build out, a very simple schematic and proposal, so that way people could understand how that could potentially work. I think we're stronger in getting greater engagement and participation around the state if we do it, as opposed to just allowing them to do their thing and we give them the information to run with it themselves.
I'm just going to jump in here. I think, in listening to this morning's program and the ideas that were floated and talked about and all that, I think a lot of times, and this is definitely been my experience with these large bicentennial types of things, is that the communities or locations or whatever they might be are going, oh, we want to do something. How do we do that thing? And it may be a brand kit, that is able to go out, that just goes, here's where the logos are, this is what you can put on there. It may be some basic, what would make your event special, like, right? Like some baseline stuff so that you could go, at minimum, you should have these things. And, you know, we had the Office of Tourism during the War of 1812 stuff where they would come out and they would do a booth wherever you were going to be. They were always going to throw a booth up. So at least you knew that no matter who was doing the event, there was some string that connected all those pieces. And I think that's the piece that I feel like could be the most valuable. I don't think many people, maybe I'm wrong. Again, I don't think many of these sites are expecting the state to come in and run the program or put it together or do any of that stuff. They just want to know, what are my guidelines to operate under? What are the parameters that I need to do? And going back to your website, a coordinated calendar, what are my parameters to get that material to you? What do I need to include in that event to make sure that it is part of the event, the bigger event? You know, so that's I think guidelines and systems are a relatively low cost situation that gets everybody sort of on the same page, so that we know we're all putting the same logo, we're all putting the same piece of information, we're all putting the same whatever it might be, that shows it's coordinated.
Yeah, yes, I agree. Basically what you're saying, and so I'm make sure I'm understanding, you're basically saying let's provide a blueprint which has guidelines. It's like, okay, yes, here's all of the marketing materials. Here are some baseline things that you can and should do. Work with, you know, the such and such office in your town, create a, you know, find where it's going to be, have X, Y, and Z services, make sure what it is you're promoting ties into what you're doing today and where you see the town going in the future, however it is we want to do it. But yes, I get what you're saying. So I'm making, okay, fantastic.
And I think, you know, again, going back to the earlier comment, that we're not expecting them to have 6 old guys reenacting. Like, that does not make you a 250 celebration, right? It can be these other things, as long as you have kind of met some of these guidelines and whatever. And, you know, if the town of who knows where decides they want to do a 250 thing, and it's all about a topic that they're doing, a classic car cruise. Is that okay? Are we comfortable with that? Maybe we are. I just, you know, I think to know where those guidelines and those parameters are for the town that says, oh, America 250, that makes me immediately think of a car cruise. Why? What's your purpose there?
And so I want to just interrupt really quickly and say that has been a conversation at the commission level. We have an outline of guidelines that haven't been approved yet. But I anticipate those being approved at our October meeting and distributed after that. And at the end of the day, what it is we're looking for something that connects to at least one of the 4 broad themes that we've set for Connecticut's commemoration, or that directly hits one of the goals outlined in the governor's executive order. And that then it's generally inclusive and nonpartisan. So those are the basic guidelines.
Yeah, I guess.
Are those themes on the website?
Yes, and I threw a link in the chat, but I can also send it out when I send out kind of a recap of a few of the key points from today.
So I guess just to reinforce, I think the point of the work of this subcommittee that's part of the Connecticut 250 Commission is to create communication and links about what's going on. And if it takes the form of the website, and there's criteria to get placed on the website. And I know that there is a America 250 logo. Anthony, Cindy, and Jason Mancini and I talked about the possibility of working together with one of the state agencies to do something that's unique for Connecticut 250 in terms of a logo. And I guess I would see that if the town of Vernon was doing something that fit the guidelines, the benefit for them would be that they'd be listed with all the other 250 activities. And, you know, in order to do that, then they would have to use the logo. And so that's where I see the the way that that could work would be advantageous for them, and it would get the all of the activities related to the 250th in one place, as Anthony was talking about too. One of the other suggestions that Denise Merrill made at a meeting that I don't know how to do it, so I thought I would pose it to this committee. She thought that it would be important. She thought it would be important for there to be a Connecticut 250 designee in all 169 towns. I just picked that up in some of the notes, and it was something that Denise talked about. And one, is that a good idea? And then two, how do we go about doing that?
What does she mean by designee? Does she mean an individual or a commission or both?
I thought she meant an individual.
I can describe the individual in the town of Litchfield who has been in hot pursuit of me for the last 6 months. Who has already organized a Litchfield 250 commission locally, who was involved in the last celebration. It's pretty remarkable. I think they self-identify if they understand that the opportunity is available. There's an admirable amount of enthusiasm. The question that comes back to me often is, what resources ultimately will the commission be able to provide to us? And then there's also the question of saying, well, that I think if we are to have designees, of course I'm in favor of it, because for me it's easy to see an example of one. I don't know how we get to all 169 towns, but maybe it's a simple networking effort. I imagine folks who are similarly motivated are likely engaged with one another, so it's possible. But the only word of caution I would have on that is that, of course, it might mean that we end up with a singular perspective or a narrower perspective on what ought to be done around the 250th. But so yeah, that's my simple answer to your question, Rob. I've got one. She's here. She's got the URL and everything.
Yeah. I would say an individual is probably easier, somewhat surprisingly. I'm thinking of like the town historians that a lot of towns have, and it's like those may not be the best options to be able to tell a really good story. Kind of what Anthony's saying there is, so what I think of is I think putting something like the Last Green Valley Heritage Area to use that covers a good section of the eastern part of the state, or the Housatonic Heritage Area, that those could be ways of utilizing it where they can do some regional. I know regionalism is sometimes a taboo word in Connecticut, but I live up in Suffield. The Suffield Historical Society would be fine if they had a subcommittee that qualified as having a committee in town, but I wouldn't necessarily. The town historian in Coventry is a very nice guy, but would he speak for the Nathan Hale homestead? That's a little more difficult. I think it should be aspirational, maybe in nature. We aspire to have representation in each of our communities, but I don't think that direct.
And if we did, maybe it ought to kind of reflect the composition of the state commission. That is to say that, are we talking about having a designated representative in the town of Litchfield for marketing and tourism on this subcommittee, just as each which would be impossible. You'd end up with, every subcommittee meeting would have 169 people in addition to us listening in. But so, I wonder, right? That's my, is that person responsible for then, speaking to a group of people locally on all of the subjects?
Mm-hmm. So I would actually, going back to what Aaron was saying about regionalism, I don't think it's a taboo. I think it's going to be, I'm not worried about executing the 169 designees and like getting the word out. That we can figure out. I think we actually do risk, though, end up having the challenge of having 169 complainers coming to us all. And we have to listen to them and take their ideas, which some of them are good and some of them are going to be insane. What I do recommend, and we've seen some success with this through tourism, is we do have the 3 tourism districts: Western, Central, and Eastern. And Eastern, being very, look, Litchfield Hills is very different than the Fairfield County area, but they do a good job about dividing that up and working together. Same with the eastern part of the state. The Last Green Valley is very different than Mystic. However, they all work together pretty well, and they work together with us. And so I think the best way for us to do something like this would be to potentially even get each of the tourism regions to provide a designee or 2 designees, however they want to divide it up, and send them to us and let them be part of maybe this committee as opposed to the greater committee altogether.
And I will add,
Good idea.
Frank has a few folks that he has recommended that I'll share out with everyone. One in each of the tourism regional districts, but we could always do 2. In terms of this initiative, I know Denise is determined to make it a part of what we do. During our site visits that we've started doing around Connecticut historical sites, we've been inviting town officials and asking town officials to identify somebody. So that way it is not de facto the historical society or the town historian. It's been more of a conversation, and we've encouraged inclusion of DEI commissions, economic development commissions. We've really used it as an opportunity to encourage everybody to think very broadly about who should be involved in their town committee, commission, whatever you want to call it. And so we're slowly starting to get more names. Hopefully by 2026, we've identified 169, but it's really, I hear everyone's doubts about letting towns just nominate one person and who will be that de facto person. And so, yeah, we're going to work on making sure to think broadly about that.
Hi, this is Stacy. So I am part of the group that's trying to get the state of Connecticut designation as a culture district for Manchester. So I know that other towns have already been awarded it, and more towns are doing it. So we've already culled together people related to arts and culture and history and land trusts and commissions and things. So, and we're working regionally with the Hartford Arts Council as our rep liaison to the state of Connecticut. So far that's worked for us. I don't know if there's a connection with the Connecticut Office of the Arts and Tourism and the people who are already focusing on culture as a tourist avenue.
Well, Cindy, I think that if the commission is identifying those individuals, that's not something that this committee needs to do. I guess if that's something that is still a goal for Denise, I just wonder what the relationship or role is for this committee and those individuals. And maybe that's yet to be determined, but if there's any other insight that you could provide, that would be helpful.
I think once we do have that brand kit or those guidelines, I think all of these materials will be distributing to those 169 individuals. And that said, we're open to it being more than one person. Hartford might have 3, for example. I'm just throwing that out there. You never know. But I think it'll be a network that we can share commission guidelines and those types of things with, and then kind of distribute it. But that said, we do have a mailing list. We have about 170 people on that right now, and are seeing it continue to grow as we get out there and do more events and visits and stuff.
I'm mindful of our time, and there are a couple of other things I just wanted to touch on. One of the other notes that I made in the agenda is that one of the other goals or purposes of the commission is to engage underrepresented groups with Connecticut 250. So there was a list that included tribal leaders, Black and Puerto Rican caucus, church leaders, community leaders. I just wanted us as the committee dealing with marketing and tourism to be mindful of that as a desire. And we might want to think if there are other groups that we want to identify. And then if there are other people that we want to invite to be part of this committee that might be part of one of those groups, I think that would be worthwhile for us to discuss. So any other underrepresented groups that we want to identify? And if so, are there individual contacts or suggestions about expanding this committee that might include some of those other individuals?
I mean, I think it would be valuable to incorporate the LGBTQ plus community. I don't personally know if we have a strong history here, like per se, the way New York City has with Stonewall Inn and whatnot. So I mean, I defer to the group on that, but I think it's worth thinking about.
I think one of the most active groups that we've worked with is a group out of New Haven. They seem to be doing a bit more. A lot of it tends to be a little more human services focused. I mean, there's the LGBTQ stories out of Glass House and a few. I think we're on the precipice of a statewide trail of some type that could possibly work for that. But I will. One of the people that I'm missing in my office this week is our director of public engagement, and she's been working a lot on Palmer Warner. So maybe she could give an extra few thoughts on that. We have an intern who has been working with us and has a real interest in colonial history and sort of the intersection of that and LGBTQ life and what have you. So Andy might have a few thoughts as well. I'll make that a note and circle back and kind of think how we can be not just tokenism.
Mm-hmm. All right. One of the other things I just want to mention is that I think it would be good for us to get into a little bit of a rhythm of regular meetings in between when the commission meets. The last time the commission met, I didn't have a report to give because the committee hadn't really met. So it'd be a favor to me if when Ashley's going to send around a doodle poll, she'll have some dates, if you wouldn't mind filling that out so that we could just get like a regular meeting scheduled. And even if it's just a touch base briefly, I think it would be helpful. And I think that it does feel like 2026 is a long way away, but if any of you have been involved in planning public programs, these dates, it'll come a lot quicker than any of us think. So when Ashley sends that out, I just respectfully ask that you fill it out to your best ability, and that we'll set up some meetings so that it's on the calendar and you can anticipate that instead of starting from scratch every time. But before we adjourn, is there anything else that anyone wanted to bring up or discuss?
Sorry, just real quick, Rob, are you kind of thinking that every second week or so we would be meeting on a monthly basis or more like a quarterly basis?
At this point, quarterly.
Okay.
I know everyone's got day jobs and this is a volunteer gig, so that would put us in sync. I think, Cindy, that's the way the commission is set up, I believe, isn't it?
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah. So I just would like this group to meet so I have something constructive to say when I'm called on by Denise Merrill at the commission meeting.
Should we try to do them sort of at least a month before the subsequent commission meeting.
Yeah, I think it's a good
So
idea.
that in that intervening period, I'm amongst the people who didn't give you much to offer on that last meeting, Rob. So my apologies for that. And you're right, it was the day job that got in the way. But so we don't put you in that position again. Maybe it's with plenty of time for the next meeting.
Yeah. Understood. I think Ashley's shaking her head, so.
Cindy, can you confirm that the next full commission meeting is October 18th?
Correct. And then
So,
after that, it'll probably be January.
so why don't we aim for early October, late September for the next meeting? Does that sound fair to everyone? Wonderful, thank you.
All right, well, listen, thanks for your participation. I know it's a little after 4. I thought it was a good conversation. Appreciate people giving their time and skill and expertise, and look for that doodle poll. And I look forward to continuing to work with all of you. Thanks very much.